All right, we have here, these are model representations of the vertebra. And so let's look from C1 and C2 first. So this would be C1, this is C2. Let's look at it from this position, C1 and C2. And so this atlas would be C1, C2 would be axis. And so let's look at the structures specific for each of the vertebrae. So C1 and C2 here are articulated. So let's go over and look at, here's the anterior tubercle, the anterior arch, the posterior tubercle, and the posterior arch. And this is the vertebral foramen of C1. Now C2, we're just going to look at the underside and look at this. Would be C2 would be the vertebral foramen of C2 axis. We also have here the spinous process of C2. Now as we look on the side, on the lateral view, we have here the transverse process of C1, transverse process of C2, the transverse foramen of C1, transverse foramen of C2. The vertebral artery passes through. We'll also see here, as far as C1 is concerned, the superior articulating facets. You're not seeing the inferior articulating facets of C1 because they're articulating with the superior articulating facets of C2. Here's the C2 body, and here would be the dens of C2. All right, that's C1 and C2, atlas and axis. Here would be another representation of a vertebra from the cervical spine. So we have here the body. Here's the vertebral body. We have here the transverse processes, transverse foramen, vertebral foramen, the superior articulating facets, the inferior articulating facets, spinous process of the cervical vertebra, the vertebral foramen of the cervical vertebra. We also have here the lamina is right here, lamina, and the pedicle is right here, pedicle of this cervical vertebra. Let's look at a thoracic vertebra. And so here we have the body, and the body, there's no hole, this is from the model, but this would be the vertebral body of a thoracic vertebra. Here we'll see the transverse process, the superior articulating facets of the thoracic vertebra. This would be the spinous process. We have here lamina, pedicle, vertebral foramen of this thoracic vertebra. And then if we look at the underside, we have here the inferior articulating facets of this thoracic vertebra, and here's the body of the thoracic vertebra. And lastly, we have here a lumbar vertebra. So here we have the vertebral body of this lumbar vertebra. As we look at the lateral view, we can see here's the pedicle, here's the lamina, spinous process, transverse process, and here we have superior articulating facets, inferior articulating facets, vertebral foramen of this lumbar vertebra. Very good.